Okay, call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All for attending this evening. Hopefully everybody's watching us online. This is important. Please take the roll, Deputy Clerk.
6 council members are present, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Tilton Burden is absent.
Thank you, Deshawn. Action to approve the agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Duran,
Aye.
Niemeyer,
Aye.
Rasmussen,
Aye.
Specker,
Aye.
Wendell,
Aye.
Avery.
Aye. Okay, open forum. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address the council on an item not on tonight's agenda?
Yes, I am Dre Breland, right next to West Fargo. We live at Burden. Really hard. It's hard to plus. So I've been understanding that lately when I've been crossing the road.
Thank you, Grandma. Any other comments? We'll move on. Item 5 is a presentation on Brookings Inclusive Play Project at the Fishback Soccer Complex. Presenting this item is Victoria Schmidt-Babb, Cunningham Recreation and Play for All, and then Terry Strong, Cunningham Recreation, and Kristen Zimmerman, our Park and Rec and Forestry Director.
Thank you, Mayor and members. We are very excited to make a formal announcement today to officially unveil the designs of the new inclusive playground and play spaces at the Fishback Soccer Complex. It's really important for our community to provide inclusive play experiences, and our people up here will go more into detail on what that will mean to our community. It really builds a sense of community, though. I've been in communities that have built playgrounds and play spaces like this, and it's really a hallmark of what it shows our community of what we value.
Well, hi, I'm Victoria. It's so nice to be back here in Brookings. I am part of a division of Cunningham Recreation called Play for All. I'll explain a little bit about that in just a moment, but I want to focus on inclusion. As Kristen had said, you hear the word inclusive and inclusion so much. I just put a fantastic description of it on the slide about it's the act of supporting the diversity of people within a society. And you all know this because from what I've seen, my first visit, my second visit, as well as just a lot of your marketing materials and your Facebook, you do this already in Brookings. And so this is nothing new to you. As we talk about this playground, most often people go to how it's going to benefit their children. But I want to remind you that up to 1 in 4 adults also have a disability in our community across the country. And so when we talk about this playground, it's not just going to benefit the children, but as well as adults. Thank you. So 3 things. Play spaces, what do? We're all familiar with them. We all have great fond memories of when you were children or when you bring your children or grandchildren to playgrounds, but it is about improving equity. It's about improving health and wellness. There's more and more research that connects the fact that children need to become more active. And in our society, that's declining greatly. That the idea of play for children now is sitting and playing on phones and on tablets and on computers. And so really, the fact that we want to keep our kids active and develop those healthy habits, it all does start with a playground. Also, it breaks down barriers. It fosters that sense of community. Playgrounds are often the first society that a child experiences, and so it develops that conflict resolution, turn-taking. There's so many life skills that happen on play spaces. Finally, in an economic sense, it sparks growth and investment because people come. And what we're going to present today, it's not just a playground, it's a destination playground. And so yes, people are going to come from all over. They're going to shop here, they're going to lunch here, they're going to have dinner here. And so it's great for economic investment as well. Thank you. Okay, hand it to Terry.
So hello, I'm Terry Strong. I'm with Cunningham Recreation. So I actually live in Nebraska, but I support Nebraska and South Dakota. So just down the road in Bennington, outside of Omaha. So Cunningham Recreation is a third-generation family-owned company. We support 17 states. We're one of the largest playground agencies. Fully staffed office in Charlotte, North Carolina. Lots of knowledge. Always have support there. So we'll see you through the start of this project and all the way to the end, and we'll be here for you. We're going nowhere. So that's Cunningham Recreation. We're the agency, but the product that we support and the product that makes us Cunningham Recreation is Game Time. So that's our equipment. So Game Time, made in USA, out of Fort Payne, Alabama, where the band Alabama's from. White tube socks were invented there too. Fort Payne, Alabama, 95 years in the industry, we are established as well. So industry's highest standards, direct bolt connection, sturdy, strong, the best in the industry.
I didn't realize we had a clicker right there. Yeah. Here I was. Thank you. Okay, I'm also from Cunningham. I'm Play for All. It's a division basically that helps projects mobilize philanthropic dollars. Because most often, you know, you have a set budget. You want to be good stewards of your tax dollars. But if you want to go big, like we want to at Fishback, and like Kristen wants to, and your community has said they want to go big, they want to dream big, they want inclusion, then really there's such a great opportunity to reach out for philanthropic dollars. People want to be engaged. They want to invest something that's going to make a difference in their community and to leave a legacy. So that's what Play for All is about. I'll work closely with Kristen and some of your stakeholders, and we'll look at grants and philanthropic funding and put together a fundraising plan. Thank you. So inclusive play, you know, most often people are like, well, all playgrounds are inclusive. That's not true. They are ADA compliant because they have to be, or maybe they're being grandfathered in if they're older. Inclusion goes above those ADA standards. We want to make sure that we're fostering that sense of belonging. We're removing those physical and social barriers. So we work with a lot of play scholars and an academic institution out of Utah State that helps us design those principles of inclusion. So as we designed this, we relied on a lot of research. And what research says that out of 1,000 children between the ages of 3 and 21, 141 would have a diagnosed disability. Out of those 141, 3 would be physical. And so yes, we want to focus on ramping and unitary surfacing, but there's a lot more needs that need to be met in your community, not just the physical ones. So you'll notice the majority of the 141 is cognitive, sensory, it's communication, social, emotional. So as we put together this design, we took all of these considerations into the design. Looking at the whole child, it's more than just physical. We're not about, you know, let kids play and blow off steam and climb and all that stuff. It is about the whole child, which includes the domains of physical, social, emotional, sensory, cognitive, and communication. And so that's what our design is focusing on. Up at your, we had handed out just a little bit about this, which takes elements that we incorporate into playground design, making sure that it's well balanced, that we are reflecting all 5 of those domains. Some of the equipment will tap into each one of those. For example, music. Music's a very popular feature. It's multi-generational. And it is for children of all abilities. But also, we want to make sure that we have spinning for vestibular input, the swinging with the high back. So we took in consideration the 5 domains. We want a nice, robust assortment of features. And so these are just some of the examples that we have incorporated into the design, which we're going to get to here momentarily. And then, yeah, keep going. You can skip through that one right there. Okay. This is our expression swing. This is absolutely going to be on the design. What we have found is that when you're pushing your child, you're often behind your child and you don't get to see the joy and the experience. And so this is more that fosters attunement. It's a very popular feature. So this one is our expression swing. We did integrate this in the design. Okay, and this, you have a brochure because this has to do with a lot of data. We did have our data analyst run some data insights on Brookings. We created a report. It would take me about 45 minutes to go through. I'm not going to do that, but basically this site is a national demonstration site. It's going to be on a national registry, high quality design. You can, yeah, thank you. It's about celebrating your leadership and your commitment to advancing play and recreation. Part of the program involves those data insights, right? And making sure that we help you tell that story about how you're impacting your community. Part of that will be some reporting at the beginning of the process where we're looking at demographics of people that you're serving, as well as mobility data. And what that means is that we're able to look where people are coming from to the site and where they go after they play. And so it's really insightful to see, are they coming from this specific area? Are they coming from Minnesota? You know, what is the breakdown of the user? How many are local residents? So we help kind of provide that data so you can go back to your donors and your stakeholders and share that story. And then, also part of the design is a sign like this with a QR code because we want to make sure that we capture user experiences. So as you encourage your users to share their thoughts, we have a data team that will create a report of their of the survey and then send it back to you. So there's a dedicated portal that once we're open the playground, that you'll have access to. So all of this data will be yours and it's at no charge. It's part of the program of the NDS program. All right, and this is the exciting part, I promise. So we did hand out the design and here it is. Yeah, so questions about it?
I have one question right away before I let it loose. Actually, what we should do is ask if the public has any comments or questions. All right, council, questions, comments? Councilmember Specker.
One of them is, if you have put a lot of effort and funds into building this, is it possible to design it in such a way that if in the future they build domes that could actually enclose this for winter use, but keep that in mind when designing the layout? That's one question.
I love that idea, actually. I have not seen it other than indoor play spaces where it has that dome around it.
It is possible. So they make domes that you can put in like over a swimming pool after the fact. So it would be tall enough to incorporate the diving boards and that sort of thing. So it could incorporate a playground.
Well, even if there isn't one available now, if thinking in the future, if they come up with better ones or ones that the city can afford, I think it would be nice to kind of have that in the back of your mind when designing this so that the space is there to do it if the funds are available. The second question I have is, do you have any estimates on what the annual maintenance cost is?
To start with, the maintenance costs are, it's going to be similar to a normal traditional playground. A lot of this stuff is under a 10-year warranty, which is great. Some of the more structural stuff, I think, is under a lifetime warranty. So really, it won't be any different than a traditional playground. However, this one's a lot larger. It's about 12,000 square feet. So the cost to replace like the surfacing after 10 years will likely happen. And that will be in today's dollars, the surfacing is about $200,000. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is about a little over 1.2 million. We have earmarked 900,000 in the CIP for 2025, and then we're applying for grants. But that is just the playground portion. The first phase of this would also incorporate bathrooms and a splash pad.
Which brings up one more question. 3 questions. There are bathrooms at Fishback, and I'm assuming that they are handicap accessible. Is it that far from where this is to where those bathrooms are? I mean, could that be put on the bottom of your priority list?
Yes and no. So the bathrooms at Fishback are ADA compliant. We would want to put bathrooms closer that have adult-sized changing stations, and the cost isn't that much more because we also have to have plumbing there for the splash pad. So it's just adding those bathrooms in the same, going to be a pump house. So the bathrooms in the pump house are going to be in the same building, so the cost is going to be a little bit more, but the return on investment is going to be a lot higher.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of questions about fundraising. I was wondering if that included just an individual philanthropy, or if that also included grants or sponsorship, or just a little bit more detail about what's all
Sure.
included.
Yeah, one of the greatest ways to do it is a sponsorship program. And so you're asking people to be a part of a club or to sponsor a component, so we'll create like a catalog, and then companies and families and even schools, if they'd like, they could buy in and then put their name on it, and then all of the donors are showcased on a sign that's off to the side of the play space. So yes on sponsorship, definitely yes on individuals, writing grants to private foundations as well as corporate giving programs, and then federal dollars too. And that there is a grant that's already been submitted for $500,000 to a federal agency already.
And then follow up to that, would you be assisting in collecting those dollars and making those connections as well, or are you just looking at the strategy piece of it?
So I look at the strategy, and we're meeting with a group of stakeholders in the morning to kind of get that prospecting list. But in terms of collecting and things, I do not collect it. We're partnering with the community foundation, so the gifts will be given to the community foundation, and they'll hold those gifts, acknowledge and hold those gifts.
Sure, thank you. I have one more question. It's not about the fundraising plan, but I do.
Hit on a good point. Locally, if I come in I'm from St. Louis, and so nobody knows me, and fundraising is about relationships, right? And so it is about having a group of your action team, your community members reach out to ask people to join in on this effort. And I find that it's extremely rewarding to watch your community rally around something that's so beneficial for children, especially children with varying abilities. So it isn't me, it's really about that you all are able to do it. And I've seen communities, 5,000 population that has raised over $1.1 million in Iowa. And so it can absolutely be done.
Thank you. And I do appreciate your expertise that you'll be bringing in on that strategy piece as well. But my third question was about the QR codes and the data collection. That is a fairly passive way to collect data. I was wondering if you have a goal of how many surveys you would like to collect, and if you didn't hit that goal, do you have any backup plans of active in-person collection or other ways for people who are not as digitally savvy visiting that park?
Yeah, great question. So the goal is to get 50 scans for that survey, but that survey can also be printed out and handed and then sent in to collect for those that are not as comfortable with those QR codes, for sure.
Sure. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Councilmember Wendell.
Thank you, Mayor. You had cited the national demonstration site. Are there other national demonstration sites in the upper Midwest? And what is the closest other all-inclusive play space like this?
So there is a registry with them all on it that I can definitely send you the link as far as the nearest one.
Not in the ground yet, but Mitchell, South Dakota has an
Oh.
inclusive.
Mitchell, South Dakota.
Okay.
And the national demonstration sites, they have 5 designations, so some are going to meet those standards for inclusion. Other ones will be fitness, play trails, nature grounds. There's 5. But the 2 most popular ones are inclusion and play on, which promotes physical activity and aligns with national standards for physical activity for children.
Just to clarify, is the site in Mitchell a national demonstration site, or is it an inclusive play space?
Both.
It's both, okay. And then I had one other question. It was about if there will be additional training provided to staff for this equipment. This seems unique from the other equipment that our staff are called upon to maintain. Will we provide our staff ongoing training and support to maintain this equipment?
Yeah, so our staff are trained on this type of equipment as well. We have certified playground safety inspectors on staff, and we're looking at getting a couple more staff certified just because we have a lot of playgrounds that we oversee the maintenance and the ongoing maintenance for, including the school district playgrounds.
Thank you. I was just wondering, is there fundraising? Is that something you hope to have a good dollar amount on where we're at ahead of the 2025 budgeting cycle, or kind of what does that look like?
I'm hopeful to have the fundraising kind of in 2024 and 2025 construction. I feel like that's a very realistic goal.
We'd like to see it a year, right? So next year at this time, we're breaking ground is ideally what we would like to see. It all hinges on fundraising, of course.
All right. Everybody else had a chance? Councilmember Avery? All right. I do have a few questions more about the mobility part and how much someone that is wheelchair bound will be able to participate in this. I see you have a few ramps. There's a circle picture right down here that I don't really, what is that?
Okay, so that is, a merry a parent to transfer their child from their mobility device to the seat. This is flush to the ground. So basically, they're able to wheel on it, no transfer required. Plus there's seats because we want that socialization piece. So other children are going to be with them and then they're able to twirl around and spin.
So is there a swing design similar to that then?
I'm sorry?
Is there a swing design similar to that?
Is because it's so heavy
Right.
that as it swings, if a child or a person gets struck by it, it's a health and safety concern. So those Liberty swings need to be fenced in, which defies that principle of inclusivity.
Right.
Which, unfortunately, but we do have the swings with the high backs to accommodate low muscle tone and more body parts to support a child.
Okay, thank you.
Only other than just to project is about $3.2 million. And what does that entail? What does your revenue stack look like, and how much are you asking from the communities? And when can people start engaging you or someone about the potential donation?
Well, they can engage us as soon as possible. The whole project is about $3.2 million, and that would include splash pad, playground, a mini pitch, which is a concrete soccer field, a mini one, but we can also flood it in the winter, and it doubles as a hockey rink. That would be lit, outdoor fitness equipment, walking trail, and some pavilions and shelter areas for those family picnics. With the grant that we just applied for, we have about 1.4 million committed through CIP and that potential grant. So the funding gap would be about $1.7 to $1.8 million. But I think that's doable.
Right. Councilmember Rasmussen?
If you have this data of other communities who have playgrounds similar to this, any economic impact studies from past projects like this, or is that data you've tracked before?
We do, and I can get you that. I don't have it firsthand, but we absolutely look at that component of it.
I'd be interested in just taking a look at that if
Yeah.
you could send that over. Thank you.
Have you seen the data that we've compiled? We presented it about 4 months ago. Okay, so we do have that preliminary, but I can definitely find more information for you and provide that.
All right, thank you very much. So, our next item is a presentation of the Edgebrook Golf Course water sourcing. And Kristen Zimmerman, our Park and Rec Director, and Josh Bowman, our Assistant Director, will be presenting this item.
So in 2021 and 2022, we had Lacey Well Drilling out of Del Rapids come up, and they drilled 5 test wells. The findings on those wells, we had 4 wells that were all, they drilled down to 12 foot before hitting clay. We had a 5th one at the very southeast corner of the golf course property that they got down to 16 feet before hitting clay. Lacey Well Drillings, they've drilled some stuff for us before, very knowledgeable in this area. We kind of confirmed with their findings with the East Dakota Water Development District that we were right on the edge of that aquifer in the southeast corner of the golf course. Not really a viable water source in that area, at which point is when we kind of started discussing and looking to go off property, either to the south or to the east to get further into the aquifer where we'd have a little deeper aquifer area to gather water from. That's kind of when we started speaking with some outside consultants, and Kristen kind of take it from that point.
Yeah, so also part of that process, the reason that was determined not to be a viable water source is because of the minerals that are found within the water would turn everything bright orange, is what was told, and corrode all of the equipment. So it would be cost prohibitive from a maintenance standpoint, just from the equipment. And then, so here's a map of where those drill sites were. The furthest one to the southeast is where they hit clay at 16 feet. The other ones we hit clay at 12 feet, and I know it's kind of hard to read. In April of 2023, we contracted out with a firm to do some alternative site locations and alternative water sourcing options. Some of those were a site assessment of the golf course. They did some core sampling of our ponds to see where the water is being held, if it's being held there, or if we're losing to the aquifer, that sort of thing. They found that we're actually losing water to the aquifer, so they recommended lining the ponds. So we're losing groundwater that we collected at the golf course that it just regenerates into the aquifer. That's just to the other side of the interstate. They also performed an alternative site analysis for other properties. The Everest Ponds, just to the east of the property, groundwater collection to the north, so off of the 3M properties to the west, and then seeing if they could somehow capture the runoff from properties south. They also looked at alternative locations up to a mile within the golf course. So that was looking at a multitude of different options within that mile radius. Some of the reasons that the alternative sites didn't work, the properties to the west It wasn't ideal because about 12 years ago, we did a tiling project. So we're already capturing that water that way, and that's going into the ponds that we're losing the water in. And then the properties to the north, the groundwater is actually being collected and then transferred under the interstate and being collected into the LG Everest ponds. And the properties to the south, it wasn't deemed to flow right to be collective. The results of the study, our contractor, in late 2023, the assessment was completed, and they determined with us that LG Everest would be the ideal spot or the most feasible location for water sourcing. At that time, the city requested that water samples were collected because we wanted to make sure that the water was usable and viable and worth our investment. So the water samples were collected in October of 23. In November of 23, so late, right before Thanksgiving, we received the water test results. The initial assessment from the consultant determined that the water source was viable. Later that month, we also asked for an additional consultation with the USGA, which is the United States Golfing Association, and they specialize in golf course management, and they look at everything from water sources to seed to the turf. It's basically everything outside of the golf course clubhouse. They determined it would be a potential viable water source, but it also determined that they would need to do additional on-site testing due to the total dissolved solids within the water. We may have to add fountains and aeration to get some of that solids out. So they suggested a formal assessment, which I agree with. So we have that scheduled for July of 2024. They're also going to look at seed mixes, if we can add in a more drought-tolerant seed mix into the fairways, and primarily the fairways and the rough areas, so we wouldn't have to use as much water. In late February of this year, the city received a construction estimate of $812,000. The city council budgeted for this project in 2024 of $800,000. We would be able to capture that extra $12,000 within our budget if necessary. So there's the commitment there. So yeah, what's next for Edgebrook? Discussions continue with LG Everest on potential water usage. We signed a contract in April of this year after we received the completion of the initial assessment in February of this year. It took us a little bit of time to get another contract on board, another contractor, so we signed a contract with Banner in April to do the feasibility studies of the pond. So is it sustainable? How long is that water source actually feasible? What environmental impacts is it going to have? There's some wetlands tied into the LG Everest pond. They're also going to assist us with the permitting process. It's pretty extensive, especially as we go, potentially we bore under the interstate. There's both state and federal permitting that we would have to go through, and then perform some additional surveys, whether it needs to be a flow system or if there needs to be a pump on the LG Everest property, pumping over, and then some engineered designs for the potential water source. And then they would also assist us with the construction administration. That is what the contract for Banner is, so this is just the next step in the process. As you can see, it's pretty detailed and there's a lot of moving parts, so it takes some time. Again, in July of this year, we have USGA taking a look at the course. That includes everything from seed mixes to our irrigation system, to the ponds, everything outside of the clubhouse. That will update the plan that was done, I think, in 2009. So that'll update their golf course master plan for the course side. Furthermore, we're doing monthly updates to the public available on site. We have a bulletin board in the back by the bathrooms. Gary, our clubhouse manager, is sending out emails monthly, and we'll post it on social. So there's a three-pronged approach to getting the word out to the community. And then also council will receive quarterly updates. I'm more than happy to give you the monthly updates with the rest of the public, but yeah. I'm here for any questions.
Thanks, Kristen. Any questions, comments from the public? Questions, comments from council? Well, it looks like we're getting something accomplished. And, oh, Councilmember Becker? Okay.
That the runoff north of the golf course goes into the Everest Ponds. Have you checked that for the PFAS contamination that's in that area? And has PFAS been run in the Everest Ponds?
That was part of the water testing that occurred in the Everest ponds. They looked at some of that, and it was not determined at the time of the site or of the testing. I'm not aware of any water testing that was done on site on the 3M property.
Okay, 'cause I think that that's going to be important to keep in mind when doing this. Also, I was just wondering on the USGA, the recommendations, could some of this be sort of, it seems like that should come before making decisions about the water sourcing. Just because if you can address it by what's being grown there or more drought-resistant grasses.
I think, well, I know that grasses will only, if we go to like more drought tolerancy, that's only going to help the situation. It's not going to solve our water sourcing challenge. USGA has been included throughout the whole process. Their agronomists are stationed out of Washington State, so they're a phone call and we video chat with them and email, and they're pretty responsive. They're a great organization that has been included throughout this process.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Wendell.
Thank you, Mayor. Kristen, can you clarify I may have missed this if you did clarify it, but I'm wondering if you can clarify the difference between the feasibility study that Banner is helping to do on the ponds that we've identified versus the water test results that were received in November of 2023 and some of the work we've already done to identify LG Everest as a viable location. What will the Banner study tell us about those ponds that we don't know already?
Basically, how long the water will allow us to use it for. That wasn't ever addressed with the initial consultation. How long that water source is viable. It's a significant investment we're making, and we all just want to make sure we're getting the biggest bang for our dollar. And then also the consultation, the first one, they determined that it was integrated. There's wetlands as a part of that. So what is that environmental impact? What is that really going to look like? And so there may be additional monitoring. So at what level does that impact the wetlands? That was important for our.
Does that also include permitting as well, or is that the next step?
Yeah, that does include the permitting as well. So that's the biggest component, and the engineered drawings as well.
Councilmember Avery.
We have our own, and we irrigate a lot of our lawns from that well field. Is it a thought that that would put too much pressure on our other wells if we use that same water to water the golf course?
Yes and no. So we had a meeting actually today with BMU to talk about different options that are available, because again, it's the investment and the ongoing investment that whatever we put in is going to have at the golf course. They ran some preliminary numbers. If we were to, let's say, tie into their system and water our golf course, the months that we would need irrigation, it would be about just over $77,000 a month in our utility bill just for water alone for the golf course. So that's a pretty significant investment as well, but that's an ongoing investment. But we need to balance that with how much is LG Everest going to charge us for the water and those kind of things to see what's most cost effective for the city and for our residents.
Seems like, I'm not sure all the science behind where the aquifer, the Big Sioux Aquifer, where it's at, but I'm guessing the water in that ponds came from the Big Sioux Aquifer at some point. If you dig a hole deep enough, the water that fills up isn't coming from the sky, it's coming from the ground.
Yeah, so that the way that the ponds are is it's sand and gravel to about 12 feet deep, and then from 12 feet deep to about 20 feet deep, there's a clay layer, and that clay layer is really what's holding that water in into our ponds. So you'll notice that it'll go up to a certain point, and then it never fills up past that, and that's because we're just feeding that water into the aquifer.
Go ahead and ask a question, state your name and address.
Good evening. This will be better. Is that better? First of all, I'd like to hear how many contacts there were with Everest. What are the extent of those discussions? Where are we at on cost? I didn't hear that addressed. There have been 2 consultants. There was a consultant group out of Sioux Falls, and I understand we spent $14,000 already. And I don't see much meat in the file with regard to what their findings were or recommendations. And Kristen has outlined, very isolated events that have occurred. I know that when I went off the board in whatever it was, the fall, in the last August meeting, it took the consultant in Sioux Falls approximately, in a month, she hadn't been to the Everest office. So there ought to be an answer. Everest may not want to sell us the water. Do we have an estimate of the price? And so on. And I don't think this project has received the attention that it should and the timeliness of the actions. You'll notice that, they had budgeted the money, $800,000 in 2024. That indicates that the project was to be completed in 2024. And that's what we were told on the Park Recreation and Forestry Advisory Board. We expected it to be completed this year. And what hasn't been discussed here is you've had 3 years of drought, extreme drought out there that has killed a lot of the grass. This project should have had a higher priority. And I can tell I'm out of time, so thank you for hearing me. And I would encourage you to keep the pressure on the city manager and staff to get this project done. Thank you. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you for your comments, John. Any of those concerns that John brought up, do you have any answers for those at all, Kristen?
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. One of the reasons we sought after another consultation or a group is because of the responsiveness or lack of responsiveness with the other group. So, yeah, I'm equally as frustrated as John, but we're taking the steps in the right order that we needed to.
All right. Thanks, Kristen. Next presentation on Economic Development Master Plan Dashboard. Jake Meschke, our Deputy City Manager, will present this item.
Council. I just wanted to give an update on our Economic Development Master Plan dashboard. Primary economic development efforts in Brookings are done as a collaborative effort between partners, which include the Chamber of Commerce, the Brookings Economic Development Corporation, the Research Park at SDSU, Downtown Brookings, as well as Visit Brookings. To better understand our economic environment, benchmark best practices of peer and aspirational communities, and create a shared roadmap for future action, the city, economic development partners, business and community leaders, and consultant residents worked collaboratively to create an economic development master plan starting in April of 2022. After a 10-month development process, the City Council adopted the master plan in January of 2023. The structure of the master plan can be envisioned as a pyramid. The plan consists of 7 goals, which are on the screen before you, which serve as the pillars of that master plan. From there, those 7 goals are supported by 37 strategies, and those 37 strategies are supported by 109 tasks. So that's kind of working top to bottom. If you envision it from the bottom up, as we're accomplishing those tasks, that's supporting the accomplishment of the strategies, and as we accomplish strategies, that's what's accomplishing those very high-level goals. So everything just kind of pyramids up and down and feeds off of each other within the plan. Given the varying expertise and roles of the city, as well as our economic development partner agencies, each of the 109 tasks within the Economic Development Master Plan are assigned to a lead organization. The master plan also includes a number of performance metrics to incorporate data points as a component to the master plan accomplishment, as well as telling the story as how we're progressing through the plan. The Economic Development Partners provided the first update to City Council on their progress in the Economic Development Master Plan in September of 2023 for the areas where they serve as the lead organization. Over the past 6 months, the city and our economic development partners have worked collaboratively to create and launch an Economic Development Master Plan dashboard. The dashboard, which we'll look at here shortly, provides a user-friendly and interactive experience to track the progress and the next steps on our key economic development initiatives, capture data points and performance metrics, and overall show the progress that we're making as a group on the Community Economic Development Master Plan. This dashboard will be updated twice a year going forward, around the midpoint of the year with midpoint data, and then at the end of the year to show our progress on a year-by-year basis. Tonight, I want to introduce and give a brief overview of the dashboard, including where you can find it, how to navigate it, as well as some of the information it provides. I would also note that this dashboard has just been launched to the public earlier this month. I don't want to say we're still in the beta phases, but we are still early on. And as the city and our economic development partners, who are all working collaboratively to update this dashboard, we just expect each iteration to get better and better as we better understand the software and are able to put a little bit more information out there for the public. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of the presentation. Actually, just kidding. I do want to show one element first here within the presentation. This is how you can find it on the City of Brookings website. So if you go to our homepage and highlight the Business tab on the front, you'll see a section here called the Economic Development Master Plan. When you click that, it will take you to a page that looks like this on the left-hand side, and there will be a hyperlink here called the Performance Dashboard for the Economic Development Master Plan. We also have a QR code available here on the screen that anyone can scan with their cell phone and view the plan that way. So with that, I will jump into the plan itself. Once you go through those steps that I just mentioned, this is the plan that you'll see. You can see our major goals here up at the top that I'll cover in just a little bit more detail in a second. As you scroll in, it talks about the adoption of the plan, the purpose of the plan. It also links to each of our partners' websites who are actively engaged in helping us update that. There's a little bit more introduction here. And this is just down here as another way that you can go ahead and get to those 7 goals that then work into the strategies and those tasks. If you hover your cursor over the course of each of these goals, you can see the progress on those goals as it speaks, or as it stands in real time. So within goal 1, we can see that 47% are on track, 17.6% is experiencing some disruption, which just may mean there's been a delay in accomplishing some of those goals. This is a 5-year roadmap, so some of these will be noted as upcoming, and really what that means is that not every portion of the plan was to be accomplished in year 1. Those may be goals and such that are scheduled for a few years out yet. But really, when you come up in here, the meat and potatoes of this is really kind of going down through these areas. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick a strategy 1.1 to show you how this kind of works. You'll see here as you come to this strategy, you're going to have some of these data points that are incorporated here. You can hit the expansion tool on the lower right. We'll start to collect data and populate this year over year. You'll get a brief overview of what this metric is, why we're measuring it, why it's important, and then each of those metrics will have a little bit of analysis that starts to tell us the story of this metric as well. As we get back into the progress, you can see here, these are the strategies that now make up this goal, or this is actually, I take that back, this is the strategy, these are the tasks. So as you drill down into these, you can actually get down to the lowest level of the plan, which is those tasks, and you can see that we're on track, and then each of these is going to have an update that shows our most recent accomplishments in these areas, as well as the next steps that the lead organization will be taking. Councilmember Specker, do you have a question?
Just in looking at this before you get too far, this that mentions the agency that's responsible on this actual.
On this plan, it's not necessarily directly mentioned, but it is well implied throughout. You can see that the next steps will often show references to specific agencies there. The Economic Development Master Plan also has a matrix that shows who is responsible for it. If there is an interest in noting specifically which agency is responsible for each of these tasks, that is something we can consider including as a future iteration there.
Can just speak up? When we review these, where the different organizations are in their tasks, when we review funding requests for these agencies, are we still going to be able to get that information outside of this dashboard then?
Yeah,
guess it would-
absolutely. I believe you're asking about the annual request for funds process.
Right.
Yep, they're still going to submit their required application for that. So the format that council is used to seeing in the application packet, you'll still have that. Really what we're encouraging those organizations to do is tie their funding requests back to the Economic Development Master Plan to show how the funds that they're receiving through the city are furthering the accomplishment of the items assigned to them within the master plan.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Jake.
Do you have a question? Oh, okay, sounds good. Yeah. This is the lowest level of the plan, so it does get into as much detail as you want or as little as you want. So again, when you go into those specific strategies, you've got data points, you've got metrics, you've got progress updates on where these items are within the plan, and as you get into that lowest level, again, you're getting into the accomplishments, the next steps. Really, it is just meant to be an interactive and engaging tool, and especially when we're bringing about 5 or 6 organizations together to try to understand where everybody's at in real time. This is a great tool for us to be able to track that amongst ourselves as partners, as well as provide that level of transparency to the city council, the various boards that oversee these other entities, and of course, the members of the public at large. The last view I will give here, just for the sake, is that if you go into the overall goal itself, this is the highest level. You'll see you're at goal 1 here. You're going to get a definition of what investment for prosperity means. You're going to get, again, this overall progress of where we're at with that goal. You're going to have your strategies, and you can just kind of keep clicking down to have as much or as little information as you want. So really, you can take a 30,000-foot view, and you can get all the way down into the details and the weeds. Really, the purpose of tonight's presentation is just to, again, make council and members of the public aware that this tool is out there. Certainly go ahead and encourage your navigation and utilization of the tool. Hope that you, of course, find the information here interesting and engaging, and also provide a platform if there's questions that can be asked and answered. It's just meant to really encourage and continue that dialogue. This is a way for us to take these master plans and bring them to life. Oftentimes we can do these plans, we're concerned they're going to sit on the shelf, and that's what none of us want. So this is a way that we're able to bring these things front and center and really show the purpose of them, the value of them, and ultimately the success that. So with that, I will wrap up my presentation and stand for any questions.
So I got one question, Jake.
Paul? No,
mean-
in all reality, the time and effort that goes into building a platform like this out, but it really goes back down to the beauty of the partnerships that we have here for economic development. So because we've individually tasked these goals out in the software system, all of our partner agencies are going into this software. They've been gracious learning it. They've been very patient, which is remarkable. And ultimately, they're the ones making the updates on there. It is me that pushes the master button to update our website and then goes through these to ensure that we're hitting and ensuring that there's data and things that are populating there. But it truly is a team effort.
I would just add credit. This is the city's year and a half to do. He then took these 7 areas, 130 strategies and tasks, inputted them into this system, and then engaged our partners to update it. And then he keeps on them to work with them to update it on a monthly or quarterly or every 6 months,
biannual
basis. And so Jake's done a lot of work to get this set up, but also he's working quite extensively with our partners to ensure that they're accurate based on their goals and objectives as well. So nice job, Jake.
That's what I figured. You're way too humble.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I do want to thank you, Jake, for the leadership you've taken of this dashboard. I think it does provide some tangible example of the master plan and the work that's being done under that umbrella. And I think it gives an opportunity for each of our partner agencies to provide consistent updates on the work that's happening linked to each of these strategies so we don't lose track. And we have a kind of central kind of depository for that information. It seems to me that in some areas, a future iteration or in a year or two, there could be areas where it would be helpful to refine the language with maybe more measurable language. And I don't think that's a flaw in the dashboard as much as that's just a reality within the master plan. There were certain, the master plan includes some strategies and some statements that don't always include numbers that allow us to gauge, is 70 business interactions meaningful, or is that, is that not an improvement on where we've been in recent years? So I think as we work with our partner agencies to make this an even more powerful tool, it will, in some cases, involve asking them to sort of define more measurable goals, so we know what we're seeing on this dashboard is progress, or it's going to lead us to better outcomes, or is it business as usual? I mean, I think that's sort of the piece that maybe is still missing in some of this, is how measurable are all the statements that are included in the plan?
Yeah, Councilmember Wendell, I couldn't agree with you more. As mentioned before with the partnerships, when you've got 6 different entities that are all working in one system, that uniformity and consistent language is certainly hard to achieve. But as you mentioned, as we continue to progress in this and this becomes more second nature for us, those are the details that we certainly want to focus on and continually refine. One item I do want to add that I think was in the memo, but just want to reiterate, we've kind of started this pattern of having our economic development agencies come in around September of every year to give that update to City Council. While we'll have this dashboard, and this certainly, my hope is will play a more focal point in those updates, point being is that we do still intend to have the economic development partners come in at least once a year to provide an update on the progress that they're making. And as we try to refine the language to be more measurable, that will also be an opportunity for them to answer specific questions and perhaps provide a little bit more context or understanding if there's any vague language that's used.
Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you. City Council member introduction to topics for future discussion, and I will go down what we have for our meeting for next week. Our advanced agenda. We do have a few items in the consent agenda, presentations and reports. We have a presentation from the Brookings Police Department Foundation. Pinning ceremony, a couple lead dispatchers promoted, and then 3 more officers again, maybe a 4th by the sounds of it. And then first readings, we have a rezoning and 2 conditional uses. Second reading, we have public hearing on malt renewals for establishments that have failed a compliance check within the last 12 months. And then a temporary alcohol application for the Brookings Cubs baseball group. And then we will also have a city progress report by the assistant of the city manager. And then if there's anything else, any other topics that would want to be brought up? City manager has a comment to make.
I just want to let the gentleman crosswalk. I already received an email from staff. The concern's been entered to engage Brookings, and staff will look at it first thing tomorrow.
There you go. That being said, we're going to go into executive session. There will not be any business or decisions made after executive session. Item 9, executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2.3 for the purpose of consulting with legal counsel or reviewing communications from legal counsel about proposed or pending litigation or contractual matters. Entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Say again? Okay. 1.1-25-2.5 will also be included in this executive session. Thank you. And then, all those in favor say aye.
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 We are in executive session. And we will adjourn as soon as the adjournment on the executive session. There will be no other business. Thank you for attending.